In this episode of Not Your Average Lives, I am tickled pink to bring you Debra Johnstone. And it's actually looks like John Stone, but she is in Australia, and that's how they pronounce it there. So she is a coach, and I believe she is 50, if I'm doing the math right, 58. So she is a perfect midlife example of somebody. She's had two midlife transformations. One was when she switched careers and started coaching at age 49. And one is when she hit rock bottom, she says, when her dad passed away 7 years later. So when she was 56. So it hasn't been too long since her dad passed. But she is a delight. I love her. She reached out to me because she's doing a summit and she wanted me to be one of the speakers. And we got on a call and hit it off immediately. And she is going to be one of my Australian friends going forward, who I hope to meet one day. But I hope you enjoy the conversation. It just is a great story about, how she made the decision to switch careers right in the smack dab middle of her life. I say middle because I think we can all live to 100. So 49 is definitely the middle. Somebody said to me recently, I'm past the middle. I'm like, well, that's pessimistic. So she is amazing, and she is easy to listen to because if you like accents, Australian, and because she's UK as well. So she's got this blend of both of those beautiful accents. So without further ado, here is Debra. Welcome to another episode of Not Your Average Lives. And I am here with Debra Johnstone. And she has a great accent, first of all. She lives in Australia and she's from the UK, so doubly good accents. And so I'm jealous. I want to learn how to talk like that. But she and I met recently because she reached out to me and I was just asking her how she found me. And she said she Googled me. So that's kind of cool. But she is doing a summit. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But she's doing a virtual summit and she's asked me to be a guest. So I'm honored. But we got on the phone to talk about whether we'd be a good fit. And I just adored her. She is just like my kind of person. She lives a little far to meet in person. So we'll have to do the Zoom thing. But welcome to my podcast, Debra.
Oh, thank you so much, Laurie. I know we're going to have a lot of fun because every time you speak, there's always lots of laughing, isn't
Yeah.
there?
Yeah. Yeah. It was funny because I'm at my daughter's, who's like close to giving birth right now. We had a snowstorm, so I came up a little early. She's really due on Monday. Well, like 4 days from now. But her first baby was 3 days early. So I wanted to relieve her stress. So I said, I'll just come. And if the baby doesn't come, then I'll go home. I'm only 2 hours away. But anyway, so I'm in this I'm not in my regular home studio and I've not been in my regular, your energy changes and it's snowing and I my 2.5-year-old grandson, and it's like reading him stories and looking at the iPad. And I was like, my energy level was just not like in preparation for a podcast episode. And so I always like to have good energy. So we were talking not even 5 minutes and I'm like, got my energy back. Debra gave me a shot of my good old podcast adrenaline, I guess. So she is here to talk about, I like to introduce people who are at midlife, and if they're not at midlife, they have good stories that are relatable for people in midlife, but who also have some kind of transformation to share. So she has a couple, so we'll get into them. But the first one is, we'll go by chronological age, and I'll let her talk. But it's about she changed professions and started coaching at age 49, which I love because I did the same thing just like 10 years later. Yeah, not quite 10 years later. But yeah, and she took a big risk, which a lot of people are afraid to do. So they stay in a life that doesn't light them up, doing what they aren't here to do. And you're clearly lit up by what you do now. And you are a single mom, as you say in the UK, which is great, of two boys who now have their own boys, which is great. So why don't you start by sharing kind of where you were when you made that decision and what caused the decision? How did you feel when you were going through that decision? Would love to hear about that.
Mm, mm. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It was a really big step. At that stage, my kids were late teens, right? Late teens, early 20s. And I had moved. So previously, I'd been living in this little tiny village called Port Douglas. It is quite well known around the globe. I think there's a lot of movies filmed there. And I lived there for 15 years. And I lived in a community of 3,000 people. In fact, where I actually lived was in a community of 250 people. So I'd been in really small town atmosphere, right? And everyone knew everybody. I was really in my comfort zone.
Oh, we should say how old you are now, because how long ago was that?
That was nearly 9 years ago now.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
So like virtual coaching wasn't as common back
no,
then. Yeah.
no,
And
it wasn't.
so yeah, that's even like more reason to not start something new,
I
right?
know, I
A
know.
lot of
And
people say that. They like, well, I'm live in a small town, so I don't know anybody, so I can't start that. That's a big
exactly.
excuse. Yeah. So, okay, continue.
Yeah, exactly. So I decided I've been in a number of different industries, and for the probably about the 10 years previously, I'd been in management roles. But what I'd found was that every role I'd been in, I seemed to be the person that people came to if they wanted to talk about problems, or if they weren't sure what they wanted to do next, or if they were having an issue with someone else in the team. I tended to be the person that they would speak to. So I guess I was already coaching in some ways. And then when I realized that my kids were getting close to flying the nest, one actually had already gone to university. I decided to move to what we call up here the big smoke, but we're still only in a population of about 175,000 in Cairns. But for us, that's
And
the big smoke.
if I'm thinking about Australia, like where
Mm,
are you in relation to the geography of Australia? Are you north
okay.
of
Yeah, north.
yeah,
So if
okay.
you think about Sydney's south,
Mhm.
Cairns is right up north. So we're moving to probably about a day's drive from the top end of Australia. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's very, very hot and humid and tropical here. Yeah, so I moved to Cairns, and ended up managing a medical cosmetic clinic there. But when I was working there, I just felt like I needed something more. I felt like I wasn't doing enough. I felt like there wasn't enough meaning in my work. And so I started to research life coach. Incidentally, it had been something that I'd researched many years before, but done nothing with. And within a few months, I had enrolled in a 2-year study with lots and lots of different accreditations that I did.
So you had a nudge earlier in life.
I
Yes.
did. I had a
Yeah.
nudge.
Yeah.
Because one of my friends said to me, "You used to talk about this years ago that you would like to do that." And I'm like, "Did I?" She said, "Yeah, I remember you saying it." That would have had been when my kids were younger. So I ended up doing it. I took the plunge, which was scary, even just taking the step to do that study. Like I'd done a short study a couple of years before 10 years before as a bookkeeper, right? Totally different, right? Totally different.
Yes.
And,
I find that a lot though. A lot of people do that because they think either their parent did it and they think that's the path I have to take, or
yeah,
that's going to make me the money, or it might be a skill they have too, but it's not like what lights them up. So yeah.
yeah, that's right. And I just thought, okay, I want to do something in my head, right? So that's what I did. But when I went into coaching, it was kind of like I hadn't really studied, like to commit to a 2-year program when I hadn't really studied for probably since I've been at school. So it was a really big deal just to do the study. And
Don't you find though, this is me. I could have cared less about learning when I was younger. I was like, just
mm,
get me through the class.
mm,
And in a way, and probably because I didn't like the content of what I was learning, it was kind of painful.
mm,
But and it was just like, okay, just let me get it done. It's like, pull the Band-Aid or whatever. But yeah, when I get older, and the older I get, the more so interested I am in learning, the more inquisitive I am, the more, I sign up for too many things to learn.
Yeah,
And
me
I think a
too.
lot of it's what I'm choosing, I'm picking it, and it's not something that's on, like, I have to get for my degree. So yeah, I think, were you excited about that?
Yeah, I was excited. I
Yeah.
was scared, all those things. It took me ages to actually do it. Like from researching it, it probably took me 3 or 4 months before I made the decision to, okay, I'm going to commit to it.
Yeah, and can
Um,
you describe for people who might be in the same place where they have this like feeling like they want to change, but they don't know where to begin? So when you say you researched, what did you ask friends? Did you go to other coaches and say, where did you study? Did you Google? I don't even, 9 years ago, I think Google was around, but
yeah, it
not,
was, but we weren't using it as much as we are
yeah,
now. And I think
yeah.
I've actually found an email in the bottom of my inbox that I had flagged a couple of years earlier when I was decluttering my inbox, right? And it was the beginning of the year, and I saw it and I'm like, oh, let's have a look at that. So obviously I'd seen it somewhere and I'd opted into someone's subscriber list or done something. And I opened it up, and then I went to that company and had a look, and I spent time. I sent for their free package, had a look at their free package. I spent time looking at all their testimonials, speaking to them on the phone, looking at the different options that I could do. And the first thing I opted into was the smallest qualification that they did, which is registered in Australia. It's a Cert 4 in life coaching. And I did that, which was a 6-month course. And so I took a step, right? And I think that's an important thing, point to make. I took a step, and I went to that face-to-face training, which was a 3-day face-to-face training. Once I was there, even though I was like scared out of my skin, like I was so nervous and hardly spoke to anyone while I was there, right? But what I saw there inspired me so much that I signed up for the full 2 years. Yeah.
That's great. I
Yeah.
love that
Mm.
point because so many people think they have to have the complete answer when they
Yeah.
start, and they don't realize, no, you'll just like take one step and you'll get clarity on
Yeah.
what you need to do next. And then you'll get clarity on what you need, because I never
Mm.
expected that I would have my own business, let alone do what I'm doing now. And so it was just like one baby step following what I love to do that led me to the next thing. So great. I love that. So you just started, you researched something that was in your inbox. Funny how that works. The universe, kept like knock, 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 knock.
Yeah.
And then it led you to that. I mean, isn't that crazy? And then, yeah, you did just a 3-day thing for six, as a 6 months thing, but you went to that 3-day. I think that like in person, when you're around people, like you start to meet people and you can see the possibilities.
Yeah.
So like being surrounded by a community or having a mentor or something really, really does help.
Yeah.
So yeah. So then after you left that 3-day event, then you had people that you could connect with too, right?
I did. Yeah. So
Yeah.
it was, we were all connected online then, and we all supported each other. I made new friends when I did it.
Yeah.
And I think that's an important point to make. One of the
Like-minded,
Yeah,
like-minded friends.
like-minded
Yeah.
people that are going to support you. One of those friends is now what I consider on one hand my 5 closest friends. And she's become that because we just hit it off immediately the minute we met. It was like, so I think when we step out of our comfort zone, we meet all these new people that support us on our journey. I've got an amazing male colleague in Melbourne, which is, it's a 3.5 hour flight away from me. But we support each other. We get together on Zoom and share ideas. But that's because I took the step. That's because I took the
Mhm.
step and
Yeah.
opened myself up to meeting people.
Yeah. So many people, I think, feel so alone from COVID. And I am super extroverted. So I really love in person events. I really love getting together with people. But I
Yeah.
have never felt alone this past year. And it's because I'm friggin' on Zoom every day. Like I'm like, joining coaching calls. And, I have 3 different mentors whose calls I get on. And so I think, you don't need that in person connection nowadays. I mean, I'm an extrovert and I'm at home by myself all day long. But thank God for the internet. And if the internet ever goes away, I'm really in trouble.
I know. I'm the same because I,
Like you're here.
connection.
I mean, you're in Australia
I know.
and our connection is clear as day. You're as clear as day. Yeah, it's like crazy.
I'm exactly the same. The connection is one of my values, and on the entrepreneurial journey can be a really lonely journey, right? And
Well,
but what I
I think, yeah. And I think if you're threatened by other people who do what you do, but when
mm,
you learn to like embrace and support and that we're all unique in our own way and have something to offer the world,
yeah,
that like when I realized that, because in the olden days, when, a few years ago when I started my network marketing business, it was like, oh my God, what is she doing? And she's going to
yeah,
steal what I'm doing. And
yeah,
it's like, and it was more cookie cutter because you're selling the same products and we're all selling coaching essentially, but all in our unique and different way. And so, yeah, I released that fear, and
yeah,
it
yeah.
was very freeing. I think so. Yeah. And so you jumped in, and then when you did this 2-year thing, were you still working your other job? Was it a side thing? Did you go full bore into it and just study full time? How'd you do that?
I I did a bit of both. So I was studying. I got my first qualification as soon as I got the first one. After the first 6 months, I started my business. So I started my business with that qualification, and I was working part time. So I was working 3 days a week in another job as well. So it was pretty full on, because being a single mum, I had no financial backup. I didn't have a partner at home that was going to pay the bills if I didn't bring income in one week,
Mhm.
Um, so, I was a sole income household,
I love
and
too that you said that you saw your empty nest coming, because a lot
yeah,
of people aren't smart enough like
mm,
me, that like they're after the kids are gone, they're like, now what?
yeah,
And I love the fact that you took action before that because you saw
mm,
what was coming and you didn't want to feel empty. So did you do, when you started the coaching, did you do like in-person coaching?
yeah, I did. I started in person, and because I was in a city where I didn't know anyone. Remember, I just moved there, right? So that was pretty full on. I became uh, a full on networker. I was at every single networking event because face to face, that's how we were doing it then. And so every single networking event, everything that I could be at, I had to learn, I had to learn the promotion side of it. I had to learn
Right.
about what
Yeah.
networking is
So
about. And
important.
yeah,
Hmm.
and it's not about selling, it's about building relationship, I had to learn all that. That was really, so I was really, and also this is another good point to make in Cairns. So we have a reputation for being like 10 years behind the rest of the world because we're tucked away. So coaching wasn't hugely talked about up here 9 years ago. So it was kind of like I was,
It was kind of like therapy. Only people that have
yeah,
big
yeah,
problems have
that's
therapy.
right.
Kind of like in the 60s, right? Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. Or people would just have a stunned look on their face if I told them what I did.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
not really, not brave enough to ask me what it was. So, so in some ways, I was like educating people on what coaching was, and I started speaking. I started getting invited to speak at events, that sort of thing, and that's how it built. It was really
Did
that
you
was a
travel a lot? And did you stay within Australia pretty much?
stayed within Australia. Yeah,
Yeah.
I only started reaching out when I went online.
Mhm.
Yeah.
What about
Mm.
the fires? Oh, I just thought of that. It's kind of random, but did you get affected by the fires they had there? No?
Not up here.
Okay.
We don't. No,
Okay.
we're in the tropics, so
Oh, yeah.
I we do get a month where we get really dry, but we tend
Mm,
not to because we're right on the coast. Yeah.
got it. Yeah. Okay.
Mm,
So when we were started talking, you mentioned that you really had two midlife transformations. You had the
mm,
shift into coaching,
mm,
and then you had your dad got sick and died when you were
yeah.
56.
Yeah.
So can you talk about that a bit? Because I know,
Yeah.
it's funny because a lot of us are dealing with that right
Mm,
now. And we're
mm,
dealing with, and I feel sorry for people who waited till they had kids, because I had them really young. So my kids are like have their kids and they're kind of self-sufficient. But
yeah.
we like having kids in the home, and then you dealing with parents who need help. And, it's, I have my dad passed suddenly when I was 49, 48, or yeah. And I was devastated because he was like here 1 minute, fine, healthy, and then had a brain hemorrhage and gone. And then my mom died. Well, she's not. She's not dead. She's in assisted living, but I say she died when my dad died
Yeah.
because she never recovered from his death. They were like
Yeah.
such a close couple, and it's been really sad to watch her decline, and not be able to like control it or help her at all.
Mm,
So you said, when I was, because you told me about your dad and that you lost your mom when you were 29 from cancer.
mm,
So,
mm.
yeah, so your dad was it, I guess, in your
He
life.
was, yeah, and it's you mentioned that your mum never really recovered. I don't think my dad ever really recovered either, and I
Mm,
think they were exactly the same. Yeah, they
mm,
were like, that kind of love that everyone hopes to find and only a few people do. It was like that they had that kind of love, and we were all really, we were angry for many years, like, why was she taken away from him? We couldn't understand it. And so he never really fully dealt with his grief, my dad. So his body broke down, right? So his body broke down. He ended up with having two hip replacements. There
yeah,
was
it's my
all,
mom. Just physically, she had two
yeah,
hip replacements within like 2 years of him dying.
mm,
And she's been in a wheelchair, and then she fell because she was drinking too much when she was like on her walker, and she fell and shattered one of her, her thigh bone or whatever you want to call it. I can't remember, femur. And yeah, and she's been in a wheelchair ever since. Yeah.
wow,
So
wow.
it's just so devastating. What did your dad do for a profession?
He was an engineer, so he had abused his body earlier. Like, he was always lifting things that were too heavy and always working too hard, and yeah, so a lot of it was physical, but I honestly believe a lot of it was emotional.
Yeah,
We hold
because it
grief.
related. Like you're mentally like devastated, and then
Yeah.
you physically
Mm.
deteriorate. Like there's a pattern there.
It's a pattern, yeah. And we hold grief in our hips. And then he developed COPD as well, which is, it's heart and lung related, heart chakra. It's all related.
Mm. Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. So,
Yeah.
he gradually got sicker and sicker, and we knew he was sick, and he kept telling us, I haven't got long, but he'd been saying it for a few years. So we were like, yeah, yeah, Dad, yeah, yeah. And he was serious. He didn't have long,
It's like he
and then
talked
one,
talked himself into it.
yeah,
Yeah.
he kept saying that your mum keeps coming to me, and yeah, he wanted to be with her. We knew that. We all knew that. So yeah,
So
one day he
what
just,
changed when you said it was transformative in your life? So
mm,
what was transformative about it? Would you start to think life's too short, or
yeah, yeah,
mm,
partly it was, well, he died really suddenly.
mm,
And that was a shock in itself. It's like, 1 minute he was here, had a heart attack, and then the next minute he was gone. And I went through all the emotions that are associated. How we go through guilt, I could have done more, and anger and denial and all those things. But I ended up in a really dark place. And I think this is why it was so transformational for me. I know that there's lots of sayings about sometimes we have to hit rock bottom before we actually do go through that full transformation. And I'd been having a calling. I'd been feeling a calling for probably about a year before he passed away, and I've been ignoring it because I'd already built a great business. It was going great, but I'd had this calling to work more predominantly with midlife women, and I'd
mm.
been ignoring it, even though I had been working with a lot of midlife women already, not really focusing on that, and so I ignored it. And but when Dad passed away, I lost interest in everything. You know, I lost my motivation, I lost my confidence. I didn't want to do anything at all. I lost a sense of who I was. So it really challenged my identity when he
Mm.
passed away. Yeah, I really lost my foundation, everything.
And looking
Mm,
back, do you think that was a gift, like for a reason, because
it
you needed
was.
to do this shift?
I needed to do the shift. I needed to
Yeah.
really discover who I was. Yeah,
Yeah. Now
yeah.
you mentioned the heart chakra, and not many people know what that means. Probably my
Mm,
listeners, I don't know, but I know a couple of years ago I didn't know I have a clue about chakras. So is that something that you went towards more at that point? Because that's more spiritual understanding that. And
it is more spiritual.
yeah.
I'm actually currently just about to do to complete my yoga teacher certification. So I did go delve more into spirituality. Yeah. I felt the reason I did that, we're talking about hips before. After Dad passed away, I woke up the next morning with really bad pain in my hip, in my left hip. Yeah, really
Pass
bad
it on
pain in
to
my
you before he
yeah.
died.
That's what I said.
Thanks, Dad.
What I said.
Wow.
And so it got progressively worse, 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 worse. And I started to go to yoga. I thought I need to, become more flexible. Maybe yoga's going to help. Well, yoga helped in a lot more ways than one. Yeah, it helped me release the emotion that I was holding in my hip. Because in our hips we do hold a lot of emotion, and I know if anyone's listening, they go to yoga and they do hip openers, sometimes you feel teary. It's just releasing the emotion. So that's, yeah, I've delved more into lots of different things, Laurie.
Hmm. So how long were you in this phase where you felt, I've talked to quite a few people who follow me who have lost parents over the past year.
Mm.
And so how long did that period where you felt like you lost yourself or you were looking for a new identity and you were in this rock bottom place before you kind of shifted and got out of it?
Yeah.
And what was the first thing you did to get out of it?
Okay, so that really dark place went on for about 6 months, after he
After his
passed.
death, yeah.
Yeah,
Mm.
after his death. The first thing I did was reach out to a friend of mine who's a healer. So I reached out to her. She's a shaman. She's been practicing for 30 years. So she helped me do some healing work, some repatterning, that sort of thing, um, which really, really helped. It really, really helped to have those sessions. She's also a counselor as well. So reaching out, I think, is a really big part of it. Um, to someone who can help you, someone who's going to help you move through it, not someone who's going to help you just sit there and, you know,
And
as much
empathize.
exactly
Yeah.
as much as we need that as well. We need to be validated of where we're at, but I think we need to have someone that's going to help us move forward. So I reached out to her. Then
Yeah,
she
I
went
think
away.
there's a period, right?
Yeah.
Right after I don't think it's let the people go through the grief. It's those
Mm,
stages you have to go through. But at a certain point, it's, yeah. And it sounds like you reached out too. And so as you were reaching out to her, she didn't, say, "Oh, it's okay." She was like, "Okay, come on, let's go."
let's go. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. Yeah, that's right. So, and then she went away. And when she went away, I thought I have to do something to help myself. So what is it? I know, I know that I've lost, I know that I don't know who I am at the moment. Like, I know that. So how about I start exploring who I am? So
Yeah, and
that's
it's
what I did.
interesting too that like that was at the same age I was
Mm,
when I was shifting. Like I was now like 47 is when I left my marriage. So I had kind of that shift. But in terms of career and knowing that my heart was not in the career I had for 30 plus years, it was
yeah.
like 55, 56. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
That's
So,
really, that's brave after a
yeah.
30-year career.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
incredible.
you know, I look back and I think it wasn't really brave because I tiptoed in, first of all. I didn't quit my job and go all in. I just
It's
like
the
did it
same
on the
thing as
side.
me.
I did
Yeah.
it on the side. And secondly, I was at the point where I was so desperate, you know, it was like, you know, there's no alternative. I'm not going to live my life in misery doing this thing every day when, yeah, and there's that fear. There is that fear. The fear is still there. But the fact that I was doing it just this part time was enough to light me up enough.
Yeah.
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 And give me
Yeah.
hope.
Yeah. It's the same thing, isn't it? It's kind
Mhm.
of like we reach that pinnacle where we kind of tip the scales, and it's kind of, I just cannot do this anymore. And I was the same. I cannot stay in this dark place one more minute. I cannot do it. It's
Yeah.
too
That's
painful.
great.
Mm.
And so you
Yeah.
shifted into just a different type of coaching, just like getting zoning in on women. They say a lot of times it's like the old you, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what
Yeah.
it is. I identified, it's like, well, if I'm going through this,
Mhm.
so are a lot of other women in this phase of life. And it's not always about the loss of someone that you love. Sometimes it can be the loss of a job, or it can be, your kids leaving home. There's the loss of that motherhood of you as you've known it up until that point. Even though we're still mothers, we're mothers in a different way.
Mhm.
So,
Or it's
and
reconnecting with your partner. You know, that's a
yeah,
lot of people
exactly.
are at the point where it's like, "Oh, do I really want to spend the rest of my life with this person?" You know?
Yeah,
And if you're the type of person who said, "Yes, I'm convicted. I'm like I said my vows. I'm not going anywhere." You got to make it work to your best life, right?
exactly.
So it's I think that's a big point too, because the person I was invested in my kids, you know, 24 by
Exactly.
7. And when they left, it was like, who are you?
I know, that's
Who
right.
are you? Yeah. Yeah. So,
And I even went through some of that, even though I had my new business, my new baby, which was my business at the time. I still went through some of that. But because I had my business and I had my dad, it was kind of like smoothed over on the surface a little bit. It was, yeah. Because I think
mhm.
we all need to go through this process of getting to know who we are, after those roles all change. I really believe that. I
Yeah.
think
It's
it's,
like the law of polarity, right? You
yeah,
have to have the down times in order to appreciate the up times, and they all balance themselves out. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. And that's the humanness. I mean, we're here for the human experience, right?
yeah, we
And
are.
it
That's
doesn't come
right.
with all rainbows and unicorns, unfortunately. So, yeah. Yeah. So, what else? What did we not cover that you want to cover? I want to talk about the summit because
Mm,
that's how we met, right? You're
yeah,
doing a summit, and just touch a little bit about what it is, why you decided to do it, and I'm so glad that you invited me to be a part of it because
yeah.
now we're friends. And I feel so bad because she like reached out to me and I was like kind of like not even answering her emails because I was in the middle of like yeah, my school was enrollment was open and I was so busy, and I finally was like, sorry, I'm not normally like this. I'm just like so swamped right now. We finally touched base and got on a call. You're probably thinking, who is this chick?
No, it's that growth phase, isn't it? What I've got things like that happening at the moment as well, and it can be chaotic.
Yeah, and I don't know about you, but I do get these random emails, and I'm like, you know, checking it out, like, who is this person?
I
Let me
know.
Google her and see what she's all about. But
I
yeah,
know, especially when she's all the way from Australia, as in whoop whoop land, in little.
that's a plus, actually. I love
Yeah.
Australians, so yeah. So tell my listeners about your summit because some of them might be interested in attending some and listening to some of the people who speak that you have.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So the summit was, it was one of those intuitive steps. We talked about taking steps. So it was, I started a Facebook community and for midlife women, and then after I'd done that and I started to get the feedback, I was just following what I was being prompted to do. So I just took the step. I thought, I'm going to build a summit, see what happens. And the feedback I got from the first one was huge. Like the need for what I was doing was so apparent in all those comments that I just thought I would keep doing it. So I did another one, and the same thing, exactly the same thing. So this is the third one, and it's launching on International Women's Day. So it's the Women Reinventing Midlife Summit series. It's and it's I include speakers who speak on a variety of different topics in midlife. This one is how to find new purpose, build confidence, feel vibrant, and thrive in the second half of life. And there are speakers speaking on mindset, purpose, health and wellness, menopause, career, wealth building, sex and relationships, exercise. So I like to include a speaker from, that can speak about different aspects of midlife, not just one part of it.
I like the fact that because you're focusing, you're zoned in on such a, the person that you're talking to, and it's not a broad age range. It's not multiple genders. And so you can have people with different topics that are geared towards that age and are helping person at that age, instead of just like one topic that meets everybody's needs. It's like, I love that, the way that's designed.
Yeah, exactly. And all the speakers are women in the second half, and or working with women in the second half. Generally it's women in the second half who are also working with women in the second half. So they're really
even better.
Yeah. So and they're not huge summits. They're like, I think this one we have 10 speakers, so it's manageable pieces. It's not a mammoth huge 30 speaker summit. It's something that you're going to be able to watch all the interviews on.
And the way it works is you sign up and you can watch these speakers for free, right? So,
yes, that's right.
I love it so much. When was your first one? Was it during COVID?
Yeah, it was July. It was the end of July, the first one. And that was huge. That was and a lot of it was driven by COVID then as well. Women really just needed to connect.
I think a lot of the women who just went through my free video series, Ignite Your Second Half Soul, would be interested in signing up and paying attention to some of that stuff. All right. Well, it was so good having you on, and I'm excited to be a part of the summit, and we will definitely have you back and get an update at some point in the future. And if I'm ever in Australia, I'll swing north and see you, because
come north. You will love it up here.
It's on my bucket list. Australia, Australia and Greece are the two outside the US countries that I haven't been to that I really want to go to.
Greece is beautiful. I haven't been to mainland Greece, but I've been to Corfu. It's beautiful.
Yeah. All right, Deb, thanks so much.
Thank you, Laurie. Thanks so much. It's been a lot of fun.
And what's the link? We'll put it in the show notes. I just want to make sure. Do you have a URL that's like easy to remember?
Yeah, it's Women Reinventing Midlife /Summit 3.
Summit 3. Okay, good. And again, we'll put in the show notes. I think a lot of people don't know how to do show notes because I never knew how to do them until I had my own podcast. But for the people listening, I know on my iPhone, I just swipe up, and that's where it all is. So that's my little tip for today for those middle-aged people who don't know what the hell they're doing on their phone.
No.
All right. I like my kids. Hey, can you help me?
I know, it's like that, isn't it?
Can you help Grandma over here? All right. Okay. So good chatting, and thanks for helping me get my energy back.
Yes, thanks, Laurie.
Thank you so much for tuning into the Not Your Average Lives podcast. If you haven't yet, make sure to subscribe on iTunes if you have an Apple device. You can find free resources and learn what else I have going on at the moment that might interest you on my website at notyouraveragegrandma.com. You can also find me on Instagram or Facebook at Not Your Average Grandma. If you liked this episode, it would make my heart so happy if you could leave me a 5-star rating. You can also add a review to let me know what you like about this podcast, which will help spread the word about it to others who need a little midlife inspiration. As always, be you, listen to your inner voice, and focus on reigniting that lost spark so you can start living your own, not your average life.